She bandaged the billionaire's wounds. Next day, 200 of his men surrounded her house. Sophia smoothed down her navy blue cocktail dress, checking her reflection one last time in the hotel bathroom mirror. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the pearl necklace at her throat. After 6 months of planning, the biggest charity fundraiser of her career was about to begin. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath. The elegant ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel waited just beyond those doors, already filling with Seattle's most prominent philanthropists and business leaders. Walking into the ballroom, Sophia's heels clicked against the marble floor as she did a final check of everything. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over dozens of perfectly set tables, each one decorated with stunning white orchid centerpieces. The stage was ready for the evening's speakers, the auction items were beautifully displayed, and the catering staff moved efficiently through their preparations. Her assistant, Jenny, hurried over with a tablet in hand. "The guest list is at 312 confirmed attendees. That's 30 more than we expected." "Really?" Sophia's heart fluttered with hope. More guests meant more potential donations for the children's hospital. "That's wonderful news." As the first guests began arriving, Sophia positioned herself near the entrance, greeting each one with a warm smile. Her anxiety melted away as she fell into the familiar rhythm of hosting. She made sure to personally welcome the major donors she'd been courting for months. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm so glad you could make it," she said, embracing an elderly woman in a shimmering silver gown. "Your continued support means the world to us." The ballroom quickly filled with the buzz of conversation and the soft notes of classical music from the string quartet. Sophia wove through the crowd, checking that everything ran smoothly. The waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and the silent auction tables drew interested clusters of guests. Just as she was about to head to the podium for her welcome speech, she heard a sharp gasp from behind her. Sophia turned to see a tall man in a dark suit stagger forward, his hand clutching his chest. Before she could react, his knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the floor with a heavy thud. Several people screamed. The music stopped abruptly, replaced by the sounds of concerned murmurs and rushed footsteps. Without hesitation, Sophia rushed to the man's side, her event-planning instincts kicking into crisis mode. She knelt beside him, not caring about her dress against the floor. His face was pale and clammy, and a small cut on his forehead bled where he'd struck it during the fall. "Someone call 911!" she called out firmly, her voice cutting through the chaos. She loosened his tie and checked his breathing while Jenny cleared the growing crowd of onlookers. "Sir? Can you hear me?" Sophia asked, gently patting his cheek. The man's eyelids fluttered, but he remained unconscious. She grabbed a clean napkin from a nearby table and pressed it carefully against the cut on his forehead. Time seemed to slow as she waited for the paramedics, maintaining pressure on the wound. She noticed his expensive watch, the perfect tailoring of his suit, but his face wasn't familiar to her despite having memorized the guest list. Whoever he was, he needed help, and that was all that mattered in the moment. The sound of approaching sirens filtered through the ballroom's windows. Sophia's carefully planned evening had descended into chaos, but as she held the napkin to the stranger's head, she felt an odd sense of certainty. This was exactly where she needed to be. The paramedics had just finished checking the man's vital signs when his eyes fully opened. He blinked several times, taking in the scene around him with confusion. The medical team helped him sit up slowly while Sophia hovered nearby, still holding the blood-stained napkin. "How are you feeling, sir?" one of the paramedics asked, shining a small light in his eyes. I'm all right," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Just got a bit dizzy there." He touched the small bandage they'd placed on his forehead and winced. "Your blood pressure dropped quite suddenly. the paramedic explained, "but it's stabilizing now. Still, we'd recommend getting checked out at the hospital." The man shook his head. "I'll be fine. I'll see my personal physician tomorrow." He turned to Sophia, who was trying to step away discreetly. "Wait, please. You're the one who helped me?" Sophia nodded, smoothing her dress self-consciously. "I just did what anyone would do. The important thing is that you're okay." "No, really." He struggled to his feet, waving away the paramedic's helping hands. "I need to properly thank you. That was quick thinking with the first aid." He reached into his jacket pocket for a business card. "Please, it's not necessary," Sophia said quickly. "I should actually get back to the event." She glanced around the ballroom, where Jenny had somehow managed to keep things running smoothly. The music had resumed, and most guests had returned to their conversations, though many still cast curious glances their way. "At least tell me your name," he insisted, straightening his tie. "I'm Sophia Mills, the event coordinator." She offered a polite smile. "And really, I'm just glad you're all right. Now, if you'll excuse me—" "Event coordinator? Wait, I need to—" But Sophia had already turned away, hurrying toward a group of donors who needed her attention. For the next 2 hours, she threw herself into damage control, making sure the fundraiser stayed on track despite the earlier excitement. She gave her speech, managed the live auction, and thanked guests as they departed. As the last attendees filed out, the man appeared again, now looking much more composed despite the bandage on his forehead. "Ms. Mills, please. I insist on doing something to repay your kindness." Sophia sighed, too tired now to maintain perfect politeness. "Sir, I appreciate the thought, but helping people is literally my job. I run fundraisers for the Children's Hospital. That's all the repayment I need." "But, really," she said firmly, "the best thing you can do is take care of yourself, and maybe consider making a donation to the hospital if you're so inclined. Now, please excuse me, I need to oversee the cleanup." He opened his mouth as if to protest again, but finally nodded, accepting defeat. "Thank you, Ms. Mills. You're quite remarkable." Sophia watched him leave, then sagged against the nearest wall, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Jenny appeared at her side with a glass of water. "What a night," her assistant said, shaking her head, "but we still raised over $500,000 for the hospital." Sophia smiled, taking a long sip of water. "That's what matters." She looked around the emptying ballroom, relief washing over her. Despite the unexpected drama, they'd achieved their goal. Children would get the medical care they needed, and everyone was safe. "Come on," she said to Jenny. "Let's finish up here so we can all go home." Sunlight streamed through Sophia's bedroom window, and she stretched lazily in her bed. The events of last night's fundraiser felt like a distant dream. She pulled herself up, wrapping her favorite fleece robe around her pajamas, and padded to the kitchen to start her morning coffee routine. While the coffee maker gurgled to life, she noticed something odd through her kitchen window. A black SUV was parked across the street. That wasn't typical for her quiet suburban neighborhood. As she peered closer, she spotted another one. And another. Her heart started racing. Moving to her living room window, Sophia's jaw dropped. The entire street was lined with identical black vehicles. Men in dark suits stood at regular intervals along the sidewalk, some speaking into earpieces, others scanning the area with alert expressions. "What in the world?" she whispered, pressing her face against the glass. The men weren't just on the sidewalk. They were positioned around her entire property. Her small front yard, usually empty except for her prized rose bushes, now hosted at least a dozen serious-looking men in suits. Some stood near her garden, others by her mailbox, creating what appeared to be a security perimeter. Sophia's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Should she call the police? Before she could dial, her doorbell rang, making her jump. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a suit who looked more important than the others, his posture more commanding, his suit more expensive. "Ms. Mills," he called out, his voice professional but gentle. "Please don't be alarmed. We're here on behalf of Mr. Nathaniel. He would like to speak with you." Sophia's mind raced. Nathaniel. She didn't know any Nathaniel. The only significant thing that had happened recently was the fundraiser, and that man who'd collapsed. A sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up to her curb, its polished surface gleaming in the morning sun. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door with practiced precision. A tall figure emerged, and Sophia's breath caught in her throat. It was him, the man from last night, but he looked completely different now. Gone was the slightly disheveled appearance from after his fall. Instead, he wore an impeccably tailored three-piece suit that probably cost more than her car. His presence commanded attention, and every suited man on the street stood a little straighter as he approached her house. His stern expression made Sophia's stomach flip. She watched as he walked up her garden path with measured steps, his shoulders back, head held high. The morning sun caught the silver at his temples, and despite her confusion and fear, she couldn't help but notice how distinguished he looked. The man who'd rung her doorbell stepped aside as Nathaniel approached. Through the peephole, Sophia could now clearly see his face. The small bandage from last night was gone, replaced by a subtle butterfly strip. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Intense, focused, and fixed directly on her door, as if he could see right through it. This wasn't just some wealthy businessman, Sophia realized with growing awareness. The security detail, the cars, the commanding presence. This man was something else entirely. She'd heard whispers about the reclusive heir to one of the city's most powerful empires, but she'd never seen him until now. Her hand hovered over the doorknob as another knock echoed through her small foyer. This time it was Nathaniel himself who spoke. "Ms. Mills." His deep voice carried easily through the door. "We need to talk." Sophia's hands shook as she opened the door. Nathaniel stood there, his tall frame filling her doorway, radiating authority and power. His gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made her want to step back. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice softer than she expected. She nodded mutely, stepping aside. He entered her modest living room, looking somewhat out of place in his expensive suit among her second-hand furniture. Through the window she could see the men outside maintaining their positions. "Please, sit." He gestured to her own couch, as if he were the host. Sophia sank into the cushions, gripping a throw pillow like a shield. "I owe you an explanation," Nathaniel began, settling into the armchair across from her. "First, I want to thank you again for your help last night. But I need you to understand who I am and why I'm here." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "My name is Nathaniel Romano. I control an organization that operates across multiple continents. Our yearly revenue exceeds the GDP of several small countries." Sophia's grip tightened on the pillow. "What kind of organization?" "We have legitimate businesses, shipping, real estate, technology. But I won't lie to you. There are other aspects that operate in gray areas." He paused, watching her reaction carefully. "My father built this empire, and now I run it. The man you helped last night wasn't just some wealthy donor at a charity event. You helped one of the most powerful men in the city. But why are you here?" Sophia's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Why all this?" She gestured towards the window and the small army outside. "Because you intrigue me," Nathaniel said simply. "I've had people watching you since last night. You're a kindergarten teacher who volunteers at 3 different charities. You help elderly neighbors with their groceries. You feed stray cats. A slight smile touched his lips. And when a complete stranger collapsed in front of you, you didn't hesitate to help. Sophia felt her cheeks flush. You've been having me followed? I need to know everything about people who come into my life, he said unapologetically. Especially those who show kindness without expecting anything in return. That's rare in my world. He stood up and walked to her window, hands clasped behind his back. Do you know what happened to me last night? Someone tried to poison me. The wine I drank was laced with a compound that could have killed me if I hadn't received immediate help. He turned back to face her. Your quick thinking saved my life. Sophia felt the room spin slightly. The man she'd helped, this powerful, dangerous man, had been poisoned? She'd just thought he'd had too much to drink or was dehydrated. I don't understand, she managed to say. What do you want from me? Nathaniel moved back to his chair, his expression serious but gentle. I have a proposition for you, one that could change both our lives. But first, I need to know if you're willing to hear me out, to step into a world very different from your own. Sophia looked around her small living room, at her simple life represented in family photos and modest furnishings. Then she looked at Nathaniel, this mysterious man who commanded an empire from the shadows. Everything in her screamed that she should ask him to leave, to return to her safe, predictable life. But something in his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability beneath the power, made her pause. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and met his gaze. Okay, she said quietly. I'll listen. Nathaniel reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a sleek leather portfolio. I've been looking for someone to oversee my charitable foundations, he said, opening the portfolio to reveal crisp documents. Someone with genuine compassion and integrity. Sophia shifted uncomfortably on her couch. I don't understand. You have billions of dollars and countless employees. Why would you want a kindergarten teacher to manage your charities? Because most people in my world see charity as a tax write-off or a PR opportunity. His gray eyes fixed on her intently. You see it differently. I watched you at the fundraiser before. The incident. You knew every child's name in the program, their stories, their needs. Heat crept up Sophia's neck. I've worked with those kids for years. It's not anything special. But it is. Nathaniel leaned forward. Do you know what most of my current foundation managers focus on? Galas, photo ops, and networking. Meanwhile, the people who actually need help get lost in the shuffle. He handed her a document from his portfolio. Sophia's eyes widened as she scanned the figures. The amount of money flowing through his charitable foundations was staggering. This could help so many people, she whispered, mainly to herself. Exactly. Nathaniel's voice softened. But only if it's managed by someone who cares about the people, not the publicity. Sophia set the paper down, her hands trembling slightly. This sounds too good to be true. There has to be a catch. The catch is that you'd be working for me, he said frankly. And as you've probably gathered, my world can be complicated, dangerous even. But I give you my word that the charitable work would be completely legitimate. No gray areas, no hidden agendas. She stood up and walked to her window, watching the men in black suits standing guard. How can I be sure? I mean, no offense, but you show up at my house with an army of guards, tell me you run some kind of underground empire, and then offer me a job managing millions in charitable donations. Billions, he corrected quietly. And I understand your skepticism. That's actually another reason I want you for this position. You don't just accept things at face value. Sophia turned back to face him. Why don't we discuss this somewhere more neutral, where I can see these operations for myself? Nathaniel nodded, a slight smile playing at his lips. I was hoping you'd say that. Would you be willing to come to my estate this evening? I can show you our current projects, introduce you to some of the team. No commitment required, just a chance to see what we're doing. Sophia hesitated. Every rational thought told her to decline, to stay far away from this man and his complicated world. But then she thought of the children at the fundraiser, of all the good that could be done with resources like his. What time? She asked finally. I'll send a car at 7. He stood, straightening his jacket. And Sophia, thank you for considering this. I know it's not an easy decision. She walked him to the door, painfully aware of the guards watching their every move. I haven't decided anything yet, she reminded him. Of course. He paused in the doorway. But you're willing to look beyond your first impressions. That's all I'm asking for now. As Sophia watched Nathaniel walk back to his convoy of black cars, she wondered what she was getting herself into. The thought of touring his estate that evening filled her with equal parts anticipation and dread. Still, she couldn't deny her curiosity, or the pull she felt toward making a real difference with those resources. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. 7 o'clock suddenly seemed both too close and too far away. The iron gates swung open silently as the black car carrying Sophia rolled up the long driveway to Nathaniel's estate. Her breath caught at the sight of the mansion, a stunning blend of modern architecture and classical design, with warm lights glowing from dozens of windows. A butler greeted her at the entrance, leading her through a marble foyer where Nathaniel waited, dressed more casually now in a dark sweater and slacks. Welcome to my home, he said, extending his hand. Shall we begin the tour? They walked through elegant corridors as Nathaniel explained his charitable initiatives. Each room seemed to house a different project: education programs, medical research, housing developments. This is our main operations center, he said, leading her into a vast room filled with screens and busy staff members. From here, we coordinate relief efforts worldwide. Sophia watched in amazement as people managed real-time crisis response and fund distribution. This is incredible, she admitted. I had no idea the scope was this extensive. We try to keep our work quiet, Nathaniel replied. It's more effective that way. As they continued through the mansion, Sophia noticed Nathaniel growing slightly tense, as if approaching something significant. He led her into a wood-paneled study lined with photographs. There's something you should know, he said, his voice careful. Your mother. She's been part of our organization for many years. Sophia froze. What? That's impossible. My mom runs a small bookstore. The bookstore is real, he nodded, but it's also a cover. Your mother has been one of our most valuable coordinators for over 2 decades. Her head spinning, Sophia shook her head. No. I would know if my mother was involved in something like this. We tell each other everything. Nathaniel walked to a large photograph on the wall and gestured for her to come closer. This was taken 15 years ago. Sophia's legs felt weak as she approached. There, in the photograph, stood her mother, looking younger but unmistakable, alongside what appeared to be Nathaniel's family. She was smiling broadly, her arm around a younger boy who must have been Nathaniel. She helped raise me after my mother passed, Nathaniel said quietly. She's been instrumental in shaping our charitable division into what it is today. Sophia stared at the photo, her world tilting on its axis. She recognized the dress her mother wore. It was still hanging in her closet at home. All those business trips, those late nights at the bookstore, the mysterious phone calls. Why, her voice cracked. Why didn't she tell me? To protect you, Nathaniel answered. Our world can be dangerous. She wanted you to have a normal life, free from worry. Sophia's fingers trembled as they traced her mother's image in the photograph. The familiar warm smile was there, but now it held secrets she'd never imagined. Years of memories began to shift and reorganize themselves in her mind, taking on new meaning. "That's why you came to me," she whispered. "It wasn't random at all." "No," Nathaniel admitted. "When I saw you at the charity event, I recognized you immediately. But your actions that night, helping me without hesitation, not seeking recognition, they proved you're very much your mother's daughter." Sophia stepped back from the photograph, her mind reeling with questions. Everything she thought she knew about her mother, about her family's history, had just been upended. She looked at Nathaniel, seeing him in a new light, not just as a mysterious billionaire, but as someone who shared a deep connection to her past she never knew existed. Sophia sank into a plush leather chair in Nathaniel's study, still processing the revelation about her mother. The weight of this new reality pressed down on her shoulders as Nathaniel poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter. "I understand this is overwhelming," he said, handing her a glass. His voice was gentle, almost protective. "Take your time." She took a small sip, grateful for the cool liquid against her dry throat. "My whole life. It feels like a carefully constructed story now." Nathaniel leaned against his mahogany desk, his expression thoughtful. "Your mother built something remarkable here. Our charitable division wouldn't be half of what it is without her guidance." "What exactly do you want from me?" Sophia asked, finally meeting his gaze. "I want to offer you a position within the organization," he said, straightening up. "Not just any position. I want you to help me run our global charitable initiatives." Sophia's eyes widened. "Run them? But I barely know anything about—" "You know more than you think," Nathaniel interrupted. "Your work with local charities, your ability to coordinate resources, your natural instinct to help others, like you helped me at the fundraiser. These aren't just random traits, Sophia. They're in your blood." He walked to a wall-mounted screen and pressed a button. Images appeared. Hospitals being built in developing countries, schools rising from bare ground, communities transformed through careful planning and resources. "These are just some of our current projects," he explained. "We operate on a scale that most charitable organizations can only dream of. With your experience and insight, we could do even more." Sophia stood up, drawn to the images. "These are incredible achievements, but—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Your organization, it's not all charitable work, is it?" Nathaniel's expression grew serious. "No, it's not. We operate in many spheres, some of them complicated. But the charitable division is legitimate, transparent, and completely separate from our other operations." "How can I be sure of that?" she asked, turning to face him. "Because your mother helped design it that way," he replied. "She insisted on complete separation. The funds we use are clean, properly audited, and traceable. You would have full oversight and autonomy." Sophia walked to the window, looking out over the vast grounds of the estate. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. The opportunity before her was extraordinary, a chance to help people on a scale she'd never imagined possible. Yet the complexity of Nathaniel's world, the secrets and shadows that seemed to lurk at its edges, gave her pause. "I need time to think," she said finally, turning back to face him. "This isn't just about taking a new job. It's about stepping into a world I never knew existed, a world my mother kept hidden from me for years." Nathaniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Take tonight to consider it. Sleep on it. Talk to your mother if you wish. She's free to tell you everything now." "I will," Sophia said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "I need to understand all of this better before I make any decisions." "Of course," he replied, moving toward the door. "I'll have my driver take you home whenever you're ready." Sophia gathered her thoughts, feeling the weight of the decision before her. The chance to make a real difference in the world pulled at her heart. but the shadowy aspects of Nathaniel's empire made her hesitate. She needed time to sort through her feelings, to understand what joining this world would really mean. Scene 1. New Beginnings. The elevator doors opened silently onto the 40th floor of Nathaniel's corporate headquarters. Sophia stepped out, her heels clicking against the marble flooring. The reception area was a masterpiece of modern design, all clean lines, natural light, and understated elegance. "Good morning, Ms. Carter," a smartly dressed woman greeted her. "I'm Linda, Mr. Bennett's executive assistant. He's asked me to show you around." Sophia smiled, grateful for the friendly face. "Thank you, Linda. This is all a bit overwhelming." "That's perfectly normal," Linda assured her, leading the way down a corridor lined with abstract art. "Most people feel that way when they first arrive." They passed through a security checkpoint, where Sophia received her access badge, then continued their tour. Linda pointed out various departments: finance, operations, project management, each filled with busy professionals working in sleek, open-plan spaces. "This will be your office," Linda announced, opening a door to reveal a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A large desk, comfortable seating area, and state-of-the-art technology filled the space. "It's beautiful," Sophia breathed, taking in the view. "Mr. Bennett will meet you here shortly," Linda said. "Feel free to make yourself comfortable." Moments later, Nathaniel appeared, his presence immediately filling the room. "Good morning, Sophia. Ready to dive in?" She nodded, straightening her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Perfect. We have a meeting with the regional directors in 10 minutes. They're eager to meet you." The morning flew by in a whirlwind of introductions and presentations. Sophia met directors from Asia, Europe, and Africa, each managing dozens of charitable initiatives. The scale of operations was staggering. Hospitals, schools, housing projects, environmental conservation efforts, all running simultaneously across the globe. During lunch, served in a private conference room, Nathaniel explained more about their current priorities. "We're focusing on sustainable development this quarter," he said, showing her plans on his tablet. "Clean water initiatives in Africa, solar power projects in South America." "The scope is incredible," Sophia said, studying the details. "How do you manage it all?" "With good people," he replied, giving her a meaningful look. "People who care about making a real difference." The afternoon brought meetings with project managers, financial advisors, and legal teams. Each presentation revealed another layer of the organization's complexity and reach. Sophia took careful notes, asked questions, and gradually began to see how all the pieces fit together. By late afternoon, she found herself in a video conference with a team in Mumbai, discussing the expansion of a women's education program. The passion and dedication of the local staff touched her deeply. "That's the last meeting for today," Nathaniel said as the screen went dark. He studied her face. "How are you holding up?" Sophia let out a long breath. "It's incredible. The amount of good being done, the lives being changed." She shook her head, almost at a loss for words. "I knew it was big, but seeing it all in action." Nathaniel smiled, a rare warmth reaching his eyes. "This is just the beginning. Tomorrow we'll start diving into the specific projects you'll be overseeing." Looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk, Sophia felt a surge of excitement despite her exhaustion. The magnitude of what Nathaniel had built, the potential to help so many people, it was more than she'd ever dreamed possible, an evening of revelations. As the workday wound down, Nathaniel leaned against Sophia's office doorframe. "Join me for dinner?" His usual commanding tone softened slightly. "There's an excellent Italian restaurant nearby." Sophia looked up from her computer, surprised by the invitation. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before she nodded. "I'd like that." 20 minutes later, they sat in a private corner of Bella Luna, a cozy restaurant with warm lighting and the smell of fresh bread in the air. Crystal glasses sparkled on the white tablecloth between them. "You handled yourself well today," Nathaniel said, studying her over his wine glass. "Most people get overwhelmed by the scope of our operation." "Oh, I was definitely overwhelmed," Sophia admitted with a small laugh. "I just tried not to show it." The waiter arrived with their appetizers, fresh bruschetta and caprese salad. As they began to eat, Nathaniel's usual businesslike demeanor slowly melted away. "Tell me about growing up in Boston," he said, genuine interest in his eyes. "What made you choose social work?" Sophia took a sip of wine, considering her answer. "I saw too many people falling through the cracks, kids without enough to eat, families losing their homes." She met his gaze. "I couldn't just stand by and watch." "That's what drew me to your work," Nathaniel revealed. "You don't just throw money at problems. You get involved, find real solutions." Their main courses arrived. Ossobuco for him, seafood risotto for her. The conversation flowed more easily now, but an underlying tension remained. They were from such different worlds, hers built on transparency and trust, his shrouded in power and secrets. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia ventured, pushing her risotto around her plate. "How do you reconcile the two sides of your empire, the charity work and the other aspects?" Nathaniel's expression tightened slightly. He set down his fork and dabbed his mouth with his napkin, taking his time to respond. "The world isn't black and white, Sophia. Sometimes you need power to effect real change." "But at what cost?" she pressed, feeling bold from the wine and the intimate setting. "Everything has a cost," he replied, his voice low and intense. "What matters is what you do with the power you have. I've seen too many good intentions fail because they lacked the resources or influence to succeed." Their eyes locked across the table. The candlelight cast shadows across his face, making him look both more vulnerable and more dangerous than ever. Sophia felt her heart beating faster, aware of the growing connection between them despite their fundamental differences. The waiter appeared with dessert menus, breaking the moment. Nathaniel waved them away, ordering espresso instead. As they waited for their coffee, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, their favorite books, places they'd traveled, childhood memories. When the evening drew to a close, Nathaniel helped Sophia into his car for the ride home. They sat in comfortable silence, both processing the evening's revelations. The city lights streamed past the windows, creating a dreamy atmosphere in the back seat. At her door, Nathaniel took her hand briefly. "Thank you for joining me tonight," he said softly. "It's been enlightening." Sophia smiled, feeling the weight of everything unspoken between them. "Yes, it has." They parted without further words, both knowing this evening had changed something between them. The line between their professional and personal relationship had begun to blur, and neither seemed inclined to redraw it. A glimpse behind the mask. Sophia arrived at the office early the next morning, her mind still swimming with thoughts from their dinner. She found Nathaniel already at work in his spacious corner office, jacket off and sleeves rolled up, studying documents spread across his desk. "Good morning," he said, looking up with a warm smile that transformed his usually stern face. "Join me? I could use your perspective on something." She settled into a leather chair across from him, noticing the dark circles under his eyes. "Did you get any sleep last night?" "Sleep's overrated," he chuckled, pushing a folder toward her. "This is a proposal for a new youth center in the South Side. The numbers work, but something feels off." As they pored over the documents together, Nathaniel's phone buzzed constantly. He ignored most calls, but when one came from a children's hospital, he answered immediately. His voice softened as he discussed a young patient's treatment plan, making arrangements to cover expenses the family couldn't afford. "You do this often?" Sophia asked after he hung up. "Help individual cases?" Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. "My father—" He hesitated, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "He believed power was everything, but I watched him destroy lives without a second thought. When I took over, I promised myself I'd do things differently." Throughout the morning, Sophia witnessed more glimpses of the man behind the powerful facade. During a meeting with his security team, he remembered to ask about one guard's newly born daughter. In the break room, he knew every employee's coffee preference and often prepared drinks himself. Around noon, they walked to a nearby deli for lunch. Two suited men followed at a discreet distance, a reminder of the dangerous world Nathaniel inhabited. Inside the restaurant, he led her to a quiet corner table. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said, studying her face. "I can see those wheels turning." Sophia chose her words carefully. "You're not what I expected. The way you care about people, the personal attention you give to every project." She paused, gathering courage. "But I still struggle with how your organization gained its power in the first place, the methods your father used." "Which I inherited," Nathaniel finished, his expression darkening slightly. "You're right to be concerned. I've spent years trying to redirect our resources toward better purposes, but I can't simply erase the past." He leaned forward, his voice intense. "The truth is, Sophia, sometimes having power, even power gained through questionable means, allows us to help people in ways that traditional channels can't." As if to illustrate his point, his phone buzzed again. This time it was about a domestic violence case. A woman needed immediate relocation to protect her from an abusive ex-husband. Within minutes, Nathaniel had arranged safe housing and a new job for her in another state. "See?" he said softly, after ending the call. "No paperwork, no waiting lists, no bureaucracy. Just immediate action when it's needed most." Sophia nodded slowly, understanding his perspective, but still feeling conflicted. The man before her was neither hero nor villain, but something more complex, someone trying to build something good from a problematic foundation. "I respect what you're doing," she said finally. "I just hope the ends truly justify the means." Nathaniel's eyes met hers, filled with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That's why I need people like you, Sophia, to help me stay focused on what matters most." The weight of his words hung between them as they finished their lunch, both aware of the delicate balance between power and purpose that defined his world. The other side of power. The elevator descended deeper than Sophia thought possible, each floor passing silently as Nathaniel stood beside her, his presence both reassuring and unsettling. His usual warm demeanor had shifted into something more guarded, more controlled. "These meetings can be intense," he warned quietly. "Stay close to me." The elevator opened to a dimly lit conference room where 7 people sat around a massive mahogany table. Their conversations died as Nathaniel entered, Sophia following closely behind. The air felt thick with tension. "Gentlemen," Nathaniel's voice carried authority as he took his seat at the head of the table. "This is Sophia. She'll be joining us today." Cold eyes assessed her as she settled into the chair beside Nathaniel. An older man with steel-gray hair and a sharp suit spoke first. "With all due respect, Nathaniel, is it wise to bring outsiders to these discussions?" "Sophia has my complete trust, Marcus." Nathaniel's tone left no room for argument. "Now, shall we begin?" What followed made Sophia's stomach churn. The meeting wasn't about charity work or community projects. It was about territory disputes, rival organizations, and large sums of money changing hands through questionable channels. The men spoke in coded language, but their meaning was clear enough. The situation in the harbor district needs immediate attention, a younger man insisted, spreading photographs across the table. They're pushing boundaries again. Nathaniel examined the photos with a coldness Sophia had never seen in him before. Arrange a meeting with their leadership. Make it clear what happens if they continue. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Sophia watched as he transformed before her eyes. The caring man who helped domestic violence victims and built youth centers fading into someone harder, someone dangerous. A heated debate broke out about handling a group that had crossed some undefined line. The suggestions made Sophia's blood run cold. She noticed how the others deferred to Nathaniel, waiting for his decisions, watching his reactions. He held absolute power here, and they all knew it. Enough, Nathaniel finally cut through the arguing. We handle this my way. Clean, professional, no unnecessary violence. The word unnecessary hung in the air like smoke. Sophia felt herself shrinking into her chair, trying to become invisible as the meeting continued. These men discussed lives and livelihoods as if they were moving pieces on a chessboard. When someone mentioned cleaning up loose ends, Nathaniel's eyes flickered to Sophia. For a brief moment, she saw concern there, worry about how she was processing all this. But then his mask slipped back into place as he returned to the discussion. The meeting dragged on for 2 hours. Sophia's head spun with the realization of just how vast and complex Nathaniel's empire truly was. The charitable work she'd been involved with was real, but it was just one face of a much darker operation. As the men filed out, nodding respectfully to Nathaniel, Sophia remained rooted to her chair. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her notes she'd stopped taking halfway through when the subject matter became too disturbing. Are you all right? Nathaniel asked softly, once they were alone. Sophia looked up at him, seeing both versions of the man now, the philanthropist and the power broker, the protector and the threat. The duality made her dizzy. She started, then stopped, unsure how to express the doubt creeping into her mind. The world she'd stepped into suddenly felt much more dangerous than she'd imagined. Nathaniel reached for her hand, but Sophia pulled back instinctively. His face flickered with hurt before settling into careful neutrality. Let's go upstairs, he said quietly. I think we need to talk. Family secrets. Sophia's hands trembled as she knocked on her mother's familiar blue door. The evening sun cast long shadows across the porch where she'd spent countless hours growing up. Now, everything felt different, tainted by secrets and half-truths. Her mother, Elena, opened the door with her usual warm smile, but it faded when she saw Sophia's expression. Honey, what's wrong? We need to talk, Mom. Sophia's voice cracked as she stepped inside. The house smelled like fresh-baked cookies, just like always, but even that comfort felt hollow now. In the living room, Sophia pulled out the photograph Nathaniel had shown her, the one of her mother standing with his family years ago. Elena's face paled when she saw it. How long? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How long have you been involved with them? Elena sank into her favorite armchair, her shoulders drooping. 25 years, she admitted, since before you were born. 25. Sophia collapsed onto the couch, stunned. All those nights you said you were working late at the hospital. I was helping people. Elena leaned forward, her eyes pleading. Just not in the way you thought. Nathaniel's father approached me when I was a young nurse. He needed someone who could provide medical care discreetly, someone who could help people who couldn't go to regular hospitals. Why keep it from me? Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. All these years. Elena moved to sit beside her daughter. Because knowledge can be dangerous, sweetheart. I was protecting you. We helped domestic violence victims disappear, treated people who'd been trafficked, gave medical care to witnesses who needed to stay hidden. Yes, we worked with Nathaniel's organization, but we saved lives. Sophia's mind raced through childhood memories, re-examining them through this new lens. The extra medical supplies you always kept in the basement. For emergency cases, Elena nodded. The midnight phone calls, the unexpected trips, it was all part of the network. We created safe houses, built underground support systems. Everything we did was to help people who had nowhere else to turn. But why work with them? With their kind of power, their connections to… Sophia couldn't finish the sentence. Because sometimes you need power to protect the powerless, Elena said firmly. Nathaniel's father understood that, and Nathaniel understands it too. Yes, their organization has its darker aspects, but they use their influence to shield those who need it most. Sophia stood up, pacing the familiar living room. Family photos lined the walls, moments she'd thought she understood completely. Now they felt like fragments of a larger story she'd never known. I feel like I don't even know you, she whispered. Elena caught her hand, pulling her back to sit down. You know exactly who I am, Sophia. I'm the mother who taught you to stand up for others, to help those in need. Everything I did was an extension of those values, just on a larger scale than you knew. But the lies were necessary, Elena squeezed her hand. And now that you're part of this world too, you'll understand why. Sometimes protecting people means keeping secrets, even from those you love most. Sophia looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw the weight of 25 years of service etched in the lines around her eyes. She saw the strength it must have taken to live this double life, to help so many while keeping it hidden from her own daughter. It was all for a greater good, Elena said softly. Every secret, every late night, every risk, it was worth it for the lives we saved. And now you have a chance to be part of that too. Sophia felt the betrayal of her mother's secrecy, warring with a growing understanding of the complex world she'd been protecting her from all these years. Chapter 13. The Legacy. Scene 1. A moment of truth. The city lights twinkled below Nathaniel's penthouse like scattered diamonds. Sophia stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the gentle snowfall against the dark sky. Behind her, she heard the soft clink of ice against glass as Nathaniel poured them both drinks. Hot chocolate, he said, offering her a steaming mug. With tiny marshmallows. Sometimes the simplest things are the best. Sophia accepted the mug with a small smile, surprised by this unexpectedly humble choice from a man who could afford the finest champagne. Thank you. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both gazing out at the city below. Nathaniel's reflection in the window looked different tonight. Softer somehow, less guarded. My father built this empire, he said quietly, his breath fogging the glass. But he built it on fear. Every day I try to transform it into something better. Sophia turned to look at him directly. The usual sharp edges of his businessman persona had melted away, leaving something raw and honest in their place. It's not easy, he continued, running a finger along the rim of his mug. Most people see power and assume corruption follows naturally. They're not entirely wrong. I've seen what power does to people, how it twists them. But you're different? Sophia asked, not unkindly. I'm trying to be. His voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. Every charitable project we launch, every family we help, every life we change, it's my way of washing away the darkness that came before. Building something meaningful from something that was built on fear. Nathaniel moved closer to the window, his shoulder nearly touching hers. When I was young, I watched my father's associates come and go. I saw how they operated, how they used their influence. I promised myself I would do better. Is that why you approached me? Sophia asked softly. Because I represent something good? He turned to face her, his eyes intense but vulnerable. I approached you because when I collapsed at that charity event, you didn't see a powerful man or a wealthy businessman. You just saw someone who needed help. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Sophia felt something shift in her chest, a softening of the walls she'd built around her heart since entering his world. She remembered that night, how natural it had felt to rush to his aid, not knowing who he was. My father used to say that power was everything, Nathaniel continued, setting his mug down on a nearby table. But he was wrong. What matters is what you do with that power. I want to leave behind something more than just a profitable empire. I want to leave behind hope. His words resonated with something deep inside her, something that had been growing since she'd learned about her mother's secret work with his family. The idea that power could be used to protect, to heal, to build rather than destroy. Every day, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I fight against becoming what everyone expects me to be, the cold-hearted businessman, the ruthless empire builder. Sometimes I wonder if I'm fooling myself, thinking I can be different. Without thinking, Sophia reached out and touched his arm. The gesture surprised them both, but neither pulled away. I've seen your work firsthand now, she said. The lives you've changed, the people you've helped, that's real. That's not fooling anyone. Chapter 14. Danger Revealed. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the quiet murmur of Seattle's business elite. Sophia stood near one of the ornate pillars, watching Nathaniel work the room. He moved with easy confidence, shaking hands and sharing quiet words with various influential figures. She'd grown used to these events over the past few weeks, but something felt different tonight. The air seemed charged with an undercurrent of tension she couldn't quite place. A man in an impeccably tailored gray suit caught her attention. He carried himself with the same commanding presence as Nathaniel, but there was something cold in his eyes that made her uneasy. Several people stepped aside as he approached Nathaniel. Victor, Nathaniel said, his voice carrying across the quiet space. I didn't expect to see you here. Come now, Nathaniel. You know I never miss an opportunity to support our city's finest causes. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. He gestured to the charity banners hanging from the ceiling. Though I hear your organization has been particularly ambitious lately. Sophia noticed Nathaniel's shoulders tighten slightly, though his expression remained pleasant. We do what we can to help those in need. Indeed. Victor swirled his champagne glass. But sometimes helping others can put us in difficult positions. I'd hate to see your father's legacy become complicated by misplaced idealism. The subtle threat hung in the air between them. Nathaniel's face hardened for a moment before he regained his composed smile. Thank you for your concern, Victor. I'll keep that in mind. Victor nodded, then leaned in closer to Nathaniel. His words were too quiet for Sophia to hear, but she saw Nathaniel's jaw clench. After a long moment, Victor moved away, disappearing into the crowd as smoothly as he'd appeared. Later that evening, Sophia found herself near the coat check, waiting for Nathaniel to finish a conversation with some donors. Two men in dark suits stood nearby, speaking in low voices. Victor's getting bold, one said. Coming here like that, threatening the boss directly. He knows Nathaniel's charity work is cutting into his territory. The homeless shelter project especially. That's prime real estate Victor's been eyeing for years. Boss needs to be careful. Victor's not known for his patience, and word is he's gathering support from the old guard who don't like the direction Nathaniel's taking things. Sophia's heart began to race. She'd known Nathaniel's position came with enemies, but hearing it discussed so plainly made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She thought about how exposed Nathaniel had been at the charity event where they'd met, How easily someone could have. Her hands grew cold as she remembered all the charity events she'd attended with him, all the public appearances they'd made together. Each one could have been an opportunity for someone like Victor to strike. And now that she was becoming a known associate of Nathaniel's, was she in danger too? She watched Nathaniel across the room, still maintaining his confident smile despite what had happened earlier. How many threats like this did he face? How many enemies waited in the shadows, looking for any weakness they could exploit? The weight of it all settled over her like a heavy cloak. This wasn't just about charity work anymore. She was stepping into a world where power struggles could turn deadly, where helping others came with hidden costs. And for the first time, she wondered if she was truly ready for what that meant. The morning sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk as Sophia left her favorite coffee shop, clutching a steaming cup of vanilla latte. She'd started coming here to clear her head, finding comfort in its cozy atmosphere away from Nathaniel's world of luxury and intrigue. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the black SUV pulling up beside her until 3 men in dark suits stepped out. Their presence felt different from Nathaniel's security detail, colder, more threatening. "Miss Walker," one of them said, his voice smooth but menacing. "We'd like a word." Sophia's heart hammered in her chest as they formed a loose circle around her. Her coffee cup trembled in her hand. "I'm not interested in talking." "Oh, but you should be." The man moved closer, forcing her to step back toward the alley. "Mr. Chen, Victor, he's concerned about your involvement with Nathaniel Morrison. It would be wise to reconsider your position." "My position is none of his business," Sophia said, trying to keep her voice steady. Her eyes darted around, looking for help, but the usually busy street seemed deserted. The man's smile turned cruel. "Everything in this city is Victor's business. Nathaniel's playing a dangerous game and you're becoming a liability. We'd hate to see anything unfortunate happen to such a charitable person." Sophia's back hit the brick wall of the building. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers, splashing across the pavement. "I won't be threatened." "This isn't a threat, Miss Walker. It's a courtesy warning." He reached into his jacket, making her flinch, but only pulled out a business card. "When you're ready to make the smart choice, call this number." A car horn blared suddenly, making them all turn. 2 of Nathaniel's security vehicles screeched to a halt nearby, men pouring out with hands reaching beneath their jackets. Victor's men backed away smoothly, their message delivered. "Think about what we said, Miss Walker. Some choices only get offered once." They disappeared into their SUV, leaving Sophia shaking against the wall. Nathaniel's security team rushed to her side, speaking urgently into their earpieces. 20 minutes later, she stormed into Nathaniel's office at his downtown headquarters, still trembling with fear and anger. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his face tight with concern. "How dare you keep this from me?" She threw her purse onto his desk. "Victor's men just cornered me outside my coffee shop. They threatened me, Nathaniel. How deep does this go?" Nathaniel's expression darkened. "Are you hurt?" "No, but that's not the point. I deserve to know what I'm involved in." She ran her hands through her hair in frustration. "They said I'm becoming a liability, that you're playing a dangerous game. What aren't you telling me?" He moved toward her, his steps measured. "Victor represents old money, old power. He doesn't approve of how I'm changing things, using our resources for charitable works instead of pure profit." "This is about more than charity work, isn't it?" Sophia demanded. "The shelter project, the community programs, there's something bigger going on. I need the truth, Nathaniel, all of it." His silence spoke volumes. When he finally met her eyes, she saw worry there, and something else. Fear. Not for himself, she realized, but for her. "You're right," he said quietly. You deserve to know everything. But once you do, there's no going back. Are you sure that's what you want?" Sophia stood her ground, her heart racing but her voice firm. "I was just threatened in broad daylight. I think we're well past the point of going back. Tell me what's really happening." Sophia's hands trembled as she unlocked the front door of her childhood home. The familiar creak of the old wooden door brought a wave of comfort she desperately needed. Her mother was away at a community center meeting, giving Sophia the solitude she craved. The house smelled of cinnamon and fresh laundry, just like it always had. She walked through the living room, running her fingers along the well-worn furniture. Family photos lined the walls, snapshots of birthday parties, graduations, and quiet Sunday afternoons. It felt like stepping into another world, one far removed from the luxury and danger of Nathaniel's empire. Sinking into her father's old armchair, Sophia hugged her knees to her chest. The morning's events played over and over in her mind. The cruel smiles of Victor's men, the cold threat in their voices, the business card that now felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. "What am I doing?" she whispered to the empty room. Her gaze fell on a photo of herself at her college graduation, beaming with pride and optimism. That girl had dreamed of making a difference in the world, of helping people. Was that what she was really doing with Nathaniel? She got up and walked to the kitchen, going through the familiar motions of making tea. Her mother's collection of mismatched mugs brought a small smile to her face. She chose her favorite, a chipped blue one with painted daisies, and waited for the water to boil. The kitchen window overlooked their small backyard, where an old swing set still stood. Sophia remembered countless summer evenings spent there, her mother pushing her higher and higher as she squealed with delight. Life had been simpler then, safer. But as she stirred honey into her tea, Sophia couldn't ignore the warmth that spread through her chest when she thought of Nathaniel. The way his eyes softened when he talked about his charitable projects. How his confident facade cracked when he showed vulnerability. The genuine care in his voice when he asked if she was hurt after the incident. She carried her tea to the back porch, settling onto the old wicker chair. A cool breeze rustled the leaves of the maple tree her father had planted when she was born. The familiar surroundings helped clear her mind, but they couldn't erase the complexity of her feelings. "I'm falling for him," she admitted quietly to herself, the words hanging in the afternoon air. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. Images flashed through her mind. Nathaniel's gentle smile during their first dinner together. The passion in his voice when he spoke about changing lives. The protective way he'd looked at her after learning about Victor's threat. But alongside these memories came darker ones. The tense meetings with his organization, the armed security everywhere, the dangerous undercurrent that seemed to run beneath everything in his world. Sophia took another sip of tea, watching a pair of birds chase each other through the branches above. Her mother's involvement with Nathaniel's family added another layer of complexity. Had she faced similar dangers? Similar choices? The sun was starting to set when Sophia finally acknowledged the battle raging in her heart. On one side was the safe, predictable life she'd always known, the life represented by this very house. On the other was Nathaniel, with all the passion, purpose, and peril that came with him. She touched her lips to the rim of the now empty mug, feeling the weight of her growing feelings for Nathaniel competing with her instinct for self-preservation. The choice seemed impossible. Walk away from a man who made her feel more alive than ever before, or stay and face whatever dangers his world might bring. The setting sun cast long shadows across her mother's backyard when Sophia heard the distinctive crunch of tires on gravel. Her heart skipped a beat as a familiar black car pulled up to the curb. She stood from the wicker chair, her empty tea mug clutched tightly in her hands. Nathaniel emerged from the car alone. No security detail, no impressive convoy. He wore a simple gray sweater instead of his usual tailored suit, making him look almost ordinary. Almost. "I thought I might find you here," he said softly, his voice carrying across the yard. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, hands in his pockets, looking up at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Uncertainty. Sophia set her mug down on the small table beside her. "How did you know?" "Your mother told me." He shifted his weight, seeming unsure whether to climb the steps. "May I?" She nodded, and he joined her on the porch, leaning against the railing. The old wood creaked under his weight. "I know you're scared," he began, his eyes fixed on the maple tree. "And you have every right to be. What happened today?" He shook his head. "It should never have happened." "But it did," Sophia replied, wrapping her arms around herself. "And it could happen again, couldn't it?" Nathaniel turned to face her, his expression earnest. "My empire isn't just about power or money, Sophia. It's about making real change in the world. The charity work we do, it's not a facade. It's the heart of everything." "I believe you," she said quietly. "I've seen the good you do. But at what cost?" He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "The threats, the danger, they exist because we're fighting against people who don't want things to change. Victor and his kind profit from keeping people down, from maintaining the status quo." The evening air grew cooler, and Sophia shivered slightly. Without hesitation, Nathaniel shrugged off his sweater and offered it to her. The gesture was so simple, so human, it made her throat tight. "I need you, Sophia," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "Not just for the work we do, but because—" He paused, struggling with the words. "Because you see me. Not the empire, not the power, but me." Sophia pulled his sweater closer around her shoulders, breathing in his familiar scent. "I can't just ignore what happened today. I'm not asking you to." He took a step closer. "I'm asking you to help me find a way to make it better. To make all of it better. Your perspective, your heart, they're exactly what this organization needs." A mockingbird called from the maple tree, its evening song filling the silence between them. Sophia thought about everything she'd learned since that fateful charity event. About Nathaniel, about her mother's involvement, about the complex web of power and purpose she'd stumbled into. "If I come back," she said slowly, "we need to find a way to deal with Victor and anyone else who might threaten what we're trying to build. I can't live looking over my shoulder." Nathaniel's eyes lit up at the word, "we." "You're right," he agreed. "The threats need to be handled, permanently." Sophia took a deep breath, her decision crystallizing. "I'll come back," she said. "But only if we work together to find a solution. A real one. No more hiding, no more living in fear." Relief washed over Nathaniel's face. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Together," he promised, "we'll find a way." Back at Nathaniel's estate, Sophia sat across from him in his dimly lit study. Maps and documents covered the massive oak desk between them, each piece revealing another fragment of Victor's operation. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked steadily, marking time as they pieced together their strategy. "Victor's weakness is his pride," Nathaniel explained, pointing to a document showing financial transactions. "He thinks he's untouchable because of his connections in high places." His finger traced a line of numbers that made Sophia's eyes widen. "These donations," she said, leaning forward. "They're not really going to charities, are they?" Nathaniel shook his head. "They're fronts. Victor uses them to launder money and gain political influence. But that's also where he's vulnerable." Sophia grabbed a notepad and started writing. "If we could prove these charities are fake." She looked up at Nathaniel, her mind racing. We could expose him without putting ourselves in direct danger. Exactly. Nathaniel stood and walked to the window, his reflection visible in the dark glass. I have people inside his organization. They've been gathering evidence for months, but we haven't had the right opportunity to use it. What's changed? Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. He turned back to face her. You. Your background in legitimate charity work gives us credibility. If we expose him through proper channels, real charities, legitimate investigations, he can't touch us without exposing himself further. Sophia stood and joined him at the window. It's not just about the evidence, though, is it? We need to time this perfectly. The Global Charity Summit is in 3 weeks, Nathaniel said quietly. Victor will be there, along with every major player in the philanthropic world. If we expose him, then his reputation would be destroyed in front of everyone who matters, Sophia finished. But Nathaniel, if this goes wrong... He took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I know. We'd be risking everything. My empire, your reputation, possibly our lives. Sophia squeezed his hand back. Tell me honestly, do you think we can do this? Nathaniel led her back to the desk and pulled out a thick folder from his safe. This contains everything we need. Bank records, witness statements, photographs of illegal meetings. My people have verified every piece. They spent the next hour going through the evidence, Sophia's charity expertise helping identify the most damaging proof of Victor's corruption. Each document they reviewed strengthened their resolve. We'll need to be careful about how we present this, Sophia said, organizing the papers into categories. Too much at once might seem overwhelming. We need to tell a story that's impossible to ignore. Nathaniel nodded, watching her work with admiration. I've already arranged for several legitimate journalists to be at the summit. They just need the right push at the right moment. Sophia looked up from the papers, her expression determined. Once we start this, there's no going back. Victor will know it was us. Yes, Nathaniel agreed. But if we succeed, he'll have bigger problems than revenge. His entire network will crumble. They stood together, looking down at the evidence spread across the desk, their weapon against Victor's threats. The gravity of what they were planning hung heavy in the air. I'm in, Sophia said firmly. All the way. Whatever it takes to end this. Nathaniel pulled her close, his voice low and intense. Together, then. We risk everything to end this threat once and for all. Together, Sophia agreed, her heart racing with equal parts fear and determination. Chapter 18. The Plan. Scene 2. The Global Charity Summit buzzed with activity. Elegant gowns and tailored suits filled the grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel, where the world's most influential philanthropists had gathered. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the crowd as servers weaved through with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Sophia stood near the stage, her heart pounding beneath her blue evening gown. She glanced at Nathaniel, who gave her a subtle nod. Around the room, their trusted team members were strategically positioned, James by the main entrance, Maria near the audio-visual controls, and Thomas monitoring the security feeds through an earpiece. Victor strutted through the crowd like a peacock, shaking hands and laughing loudly. His confidence made Sophia's stomach turn. He had no idea what was coming. Ladies and gentlemen, the event coordinator announced, please welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Victor Reynolds. Applause filled the room as Victor took the stage, flashing his practiced smile. Thank you all for being here tonight, as we discuss the future of global philanthropy. Nathaniel pressed a small remote control. The massive screen behind Victor flickered to life, but instead of his prepared presentation, it displayed damning financial records. Victor's smile faltered. There seems to be a technical... Those are records of your fake charities, Victor. Nathaniel's voice boomed through the room. He stepped forward, commanding attention. Money laundering operations disguised as children's foundations, human trafficking hidden behind refugee programs. The crowd gasped. Phones came out, recording everything. Victor's face reddened as he grabbed the microphone. "These are lies. This man is trying to destroy my reputation." Sophia moved to the center of the room. "We have proof." She gestured to Maria, who distributed folders to key journalists in the crowd. Bank statements, witness testimonies, photographs of illegal meetings, all verified by independent sources. "Your own employees provided evidence," Nathaniel added, his voice steady and powerful. "They couldn't stomach your corruption anymore." Victor lunged for Sophia, but James and Thomas intercepted him. "You're finished," he snarled at Nathaniel. "Both of you. You have no idea what forces you're dealing with." The hotel's security team, already briefed on the situation, moved in. Behind them, federal agents emerged from the crowd, badges glinting under the chandeliers. "Victor Reynolds," the lead agent announced. "You're under arrest for money laundering, human trafficking, and numerous other federal crimes." As the agents handcuffed him, Victor locked eyes with Nathaniel and Sophia. A chilling smile crossed his face. "You think this ends with me? There are others. Powerful people who won't let this stand. Everything you've built." He laughed darkly. "They're coming for all of it." The agents led Victor away as reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. The ballroom erupted in chaos as guests processed what they'd witnessed. Sophia felt Nathaniel's hand on her back, steady and reassuring. "We did it," she whispered, watching Victor disappear through the main doors. Nathaniel's expression remained tense. "We did." But his last words, "I know." Sophia nodded, her victory tempered by uncertainty. She glanced around the room, wondering who among the shocked faces might be connected to Victor's shadowy network. The evidence they'd gathered was already spreading through news channels and social media. Victor's empire was crumbling in real time, but his final threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, promising more battles to come. The celebration at Nathaniel's penthouse was subdued. Even with Victor in custody, tension lingered in the air like static before a storm. Sophia stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights twinkle below, while security teams patrolled the perimeter of the building. Nathaniel's most trusted advisors gathered around the massive oak conference table. James, who had been with the organization for 15 years, spread out documents detailing Victor's known associates. Maria worked on her laptop, monitoring the media coverage. Thomas, head of security, coordinated with their teams on the ground. "The FBI has secured Victor's main offices," James reported, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "They're gathering more evidence as we speak." Nathaniel nodded, his shoulders finally relaxing slightly. "Good. Maria, what's the public response?" "Social media is exploding. Major news networks are running the story non-stop. Victor's reputation is destroyed." Sophia moved to join them at the table, but something caught her eye. A slight movement in the reflection of the window. Thomas was typing rapidly on his phone, his face unusually tense. "Thomas," she called out, "is everything okay?" He looked up, startled. "Just routine security checks." But Sophia had spent enough time in Nathaniel's world to recognize when something was off. She opened her mouth to speak again, but before she could, the lights went out. "Security breach!" James shouted, jumping to his feet. In the darkness, Sophia heard the click of a gun being cocked. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow across the room. Thomas stood with his weapon pointed at Nathaniel. "I'm sorry," Thomas said, his voice eerily calm. "But Victor's associates made me an offer I couldn't refuse." Nathaniel's face hardened. "How long?" "Long enough? They have copies of everything. Your financial records, safe house locations, operative names. While you were focused on Victor, I gave them access to everything." Maria lunged for her laptop, but Thomas fired a warning shot into the ceiling. "Don't move. The data's already gone." Sophia's mind raced. The security teams outside, they must have been compromised too. She inched closer to Nathaniel, her hand brushing against his. "You were family, Thomas," Nathaniel said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Family doesn't pay as well as betrayal these days." Thomas gestured towards the door with his gun. "They'll be here any minute. Victor's friends want to handle this personally." Suddenly, James knocked over his chair, creating a distraction. In that split second, Nathaniel grabbed Sophia and pulled her behind the heavy oak table as Thomas fired. Maria threw her laptop at Thomas, catching him in the shoulder. "The private elevator!" Nathaniel shouted, pulling Sophia toward a hidden panel in the wall. Behind them, more shots rang out as James tackled Thomas. The panel slid open, revealing a narrow elevator shaft. Sophia could hear heavy footsteps thundering up the main stairwell. "James!" Sophia cried out, seeing their loyal friend struggling with Thomas. "Go!" James yelled back, blood seeping from his shoulder. "I'll hold them off." Nathaniel pulled her into the elevator just as the stairwell door burst open. The last thing Sophia saw was Maria diving behind a couch as armed men flooded the room. The elevator descended rapidly, taking them down to a secret garage level. They emerged into darkness, running to an unmarked car. Sophia's hands shook as she climbed in. Nathaniel gunned the engine, crashing through a security barrier and out onto the street. "They'll be looking for us," he said grimly, taking a sharp turn down a side street. "We need to disappear." Sophia looked back at the towering building, thinking of James and Maria. "What about, we can't help them if we're dead?" Nathaniel cut her off, though she could hear the pain in his voice. "Right now, we need to survive. Then we'll fight back." The safe house was nothing like Nathaniel's luxurious penthouse. A small cabin tucked away in dense woods, it had bare wooden walls and minimal furniture. Sophia sat on a worn couch, watching rain streak down the windows, while Nathaniel paced the creaking floorboards, making calls on a burner phone. "No word from James or Maria," he said finally, his voice hollow. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, and his usually pristine suit was wrinkled and stained. "Our emergency protocols have been compromised. Thomas knew everything." Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shaking. How could he do this? After all these years? Money, power, fear. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "Pick one. They all corrupt eventually." The bitter edge in his voice made Sophia flinch. She stood up and walked to the tiny kitchen, desperately needing something to do. The cabinets held only basic supplies: canned food, bottled water, first aid supplies. Such a far cry from the gourmet meals and fine wines she'd grown accustomed to. "Was this what you meant?" she asked, staring at a dented can of beans. "When you warned me about your world, that everyone has a price?" Nathaniel stopped pacing. "Sophia." "No, I need to know." She turned to face him, her voice trembling. "Is this what my life will be now? Running from betrayal to betrayal? Wondering who'll turn on us next?" Rain drummed against the roof as silence stretched between them. In that moment, all the glamour and excitement of the past months felt like a dream. Reality was this cold cabin, the threat of violence, and the weight of betrayal crushing down on them. "I shouldn't have brought you into this," Nathaniel said quietly. "You deserve better than a life in the shadows." Sophia sank into a kitchen chair, remembering her simple life before. The charity work, her small apartment, regular coffee dates with friends. Safe, predictable, boring. "I could leave," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Go back to my old life. Pretend none of this happened." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Nathaniel's face. The mask of the powerful businessman was gone, replaced by raw vulnerability. He looked lost, wounded, and suddenly very human. "I would understand," he said, though each word seemed to cost him. "I can arrange for your safety, set you up somewhere new." "Stop." Sophia stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. The thought of walking away, of leaving him to face this alone, made her chest ache. Despite everything, the danger, the betrayal, the uncertainty, she couldn't imagine going back to her old life. She crossed the room to him, taking his hands in hers. They were cold, and she could feel them trembling slightly. This powerful man, who commanded empires and moved billions with a word, was just as scared as she was. "I knew what I was choosing," she said softly. "When I came back to you, when I agreed to help expose Victor, I knew the risks. Yes, this world terrifies me. Yes, Thomas's betrayal makes me question everything. But you—" She reached up to touch his face, feeling the stubble on his jaw. "You're worth the risk." The admission surprised her with its truth. Somewhere between charity galas and secret meetings, between danger and triumph, she'd fallen in love with him. Not with his power or his wealth, but with the man who dreamed of using his empire for good, who showed her his vulnerabilities, who looked at her now like she was the only certain thing in his world. "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." The sleek, black SUV cut through the rain-slicked streets of downtown, its tinted windows concealing the passengers within. Sophia sat beside Nathaniel, her heart pounding as they approached his corporate headquarters. The familiar glass tower loomed ahead, but tonight it felt more like an enemy fortress than a sanctuary. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, watching Nathaniel check his phone one last time. "Thomas will be there," he replied, his voice steady but cold. "He thinks I'm still hiding, which gives us the advantage." His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing gently. "Remember the plan. Stay close to Marcus." Marcus, Nathaniel's most trusted security chief, nodded from the front seat. He'd been one of the few who'd remained loyal when Thomas orchestrated the betrayal. The SUV pulled into the underground parking garage, joining 3 identical vehicles. Within minutes, Nathaniel's loyal team had secured the perimeter. Sophia watched in amazement as they moved with military precision, checking corners and establishing positions. "Top floor," Marcus reported, checking the security feed on his tablet. "Thomas is in your office with 5 others. They're reviewing documents, probably trying to transfer control of the accounts before anyone realizes what happened." Nathaniel adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture so familiar it made Sophia's chest ache. Even now, facing down traitors, he maintained his composure. "Time to remind them who built this empire." The elevator ride was tense. Sophia stood between Nathaniel and Marcus, surrounded by 4 other security team members. She could feel the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on her. When the doors opened, they moved swiftly and silently through the executive floor. The lights of the city sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating shadows that danced across the marble floors. Nathaniel paused outside his office doors, looking at Sophia one last time. She nodded, and he pushed them open. Thomas looked up from behind Nathaniel's desk, his face draining of color. The other men reached for weapons, but Marcus's team had them covered before they could move. "Hello, Thomas," Nathaniel said quietly, his voice filling the sudden silence. "Comfortable in my chair?" "Nathaniel." Thomas tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "We were just trying to steal my empire?" Nathaniel moved forward, each step measured and deliberate. "Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies? That I wouldn't be watching every move?" Sophia stepped forward, holding up her tablet. "We have everything, Thomas. Every transfer, every contact, every deal you made behind Nathaniel's back. The offshore accounts, the bribes, all of it." Thomas's facade cracked. "You don't understand. They threatened my family." "I would have protected them," Nathaniel cut in sharply. "Like I protected everyone in this organization, but you chose betrayal instead of trust." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Marcus's team moved in, securing Thomas and his conspirators. Sophia watched as Nathaniel calmly reclaimed his office, making calls that would reverse the damage Thomas had tried to inflict. Finally, as Thomas was being led away in handcuffs, he stopped in front of Sophia. "I never thought you'd be the one," he said bitterly. "The quiet charity worker who brought down everything I'd worked for." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "You brought yourself down, Thomas. We just made sure you couldn't take good people with you." After Thomas and his accomplices were gone, Sophia found Nathaniel standing at his office windows, looking out over the city. She could see the tension leaving his shoulders as reports came in confirming that his empire was secure. The city lights twinkled like stars beneath them as Sophia and Nathaniel stood in his office. The tension of the past few hours had finally lifted, leaving them both exhausted but relieved. Sophia watched as Nathaniel loosened his tie, a small gesture that seemed to transform him from the powerful businessman back into the man she'd grown to know so well. "I can't believe it's really over," Sophia said softly, walking over to stand beside him at the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets below gleaming and fresh. Nathaniel turned to face her, his expression softer than she'd seen in weeks. "None of this would have been possible without you, Sophia. You know that, right?" She shook her head, smiling. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," he said firmly, taking her hands in his. "You did what only you could do. You saw past all of this." He gestured to the opulent office around them. "You saw the real purpose behind everything I've built." Sophia thought back to that first charity event, where she'd helped an injured stranger without knowing he would change her life forever. So much had happened since then. The revelation of her mother's involvement, the growing understanding of Nathaniel's empire, the betrayals and dangers they'd faced together. "I remember being so scared," she admitted, "not of you, but of all this. It seemed so far from my little charity work. But now—" She paused, realizing something profound. "Now I see that this is exactly where I'm meant to be. Everything I wanted to achieve, every person I hoped to help, we can do it all, but on a scale I never imagined possible." Nathaniel's eyes softened as he watched her. "You've changed everything, Sophia. You've changed me. When I first inherited this empire, I thought power was the only way to make a difference. But you showed me that real change comes from caring about people, not just controlling them." He led her to the small sitting area near his desk, where they'd spent countless hours planning charitable initiatives and discussing ways to use his resources for good. The familiar leather sofa felt like home now. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night at dinner?" he asked, sitting close to her. "About wanting to leave the world better than you found it?" Sophia nodded, remembering their first real conversation, when she'd been both intimidated and intrigued by him. "I meant it then, and I mean it now." "That's when I knew," he said quietly. "That's when I realized you were different from anyone I'd ever met. While others saw dollar signs and power, you saw opportunity to help people." Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes as she thought about their journey together. What had started as a chance encounter had grown into something that defined her entire life's purpose. Through all the challenges and dangers, their shared vision had only grown stronger. Nathaniel shifted to face her fully, his expression serious but tender. "Sophia, everything I've built, everything I am, it's all better because of you. This empire isn't just about power anymore. It's about making real change in the world." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I want to build that future together, not just as business partners, but as partners in every way. Opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, he looked into her eyes. Will you help me create the legacy we both believe in? Will you marry me? Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she looked at the ring sparkling in the moonlight, streaming through the office windows. Her heart felt full to bursting with love and hope for their future together. Yes, she whispered, then louder with conviction. Yes, Nathaniel, of course I'll marry you. His hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The usually composed businessman showed rare vulnerability as he pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. I never thought I'd find someone who understands both sides of my world, he murmured. Someone who sees the man behind the empire and still chooses to stay. Sophia pulled back to look into his eyes, placing her hand gently on his cheek. You've shown me that one person really can change the world, Nathaniel. Together, we can do even more. He took her hand and led her to the wall of windows overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like earthbound stars, and in the distance, the first hints of dawn were beginning to paint the sky in soft pastels. Look at all of this, Nathaniel said, his arm around her waist. Every light represents a life we could touch, a family we could help. With your heart and my resources, there's no limit to the good we can do. Sophia leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of his presence. Remember when I thought your world was too complicated, too dangerous? She smiled at the memory. Now I understand that sometimes the biggest dreams require taking the biggest risks. You've taught me that too, he replied, turning to face her. Before you, everything was about control and power. You showed me that true strength comes from being vulnerable, from opening your heart to others. They walked together to his desk, where plans for their latest charitable initiative lay spread out. Sophia ran her fingers over the blueprints for a new community center they were building in an underprivileged neighborhood. This is just the beginning, she said excitedly. Think of all the projects we can develop together. Schools, hospitals, housing programs. Nathaniel picked up a framed photo from his desk, the same one he'd shown her months ago of her mother with his family. Our families have been connected all along, he mused. Maybe this was always meant to be. Speaking of family, Sophia said with a soft laugh, my mother is going to be thrilled. She knew all along what an amazing person you are. The sky outside was growing lighter, the new day dawning bright and full of promise. Nathaniel took Sophia's hand, his thumb brushing over the ring that now symbolized their shared future. Ready to face whatever comes next? He asked, his eyes twinkling with love and determination. With you? Always, Sophia replied, squeezing his hand. They walked towards the office door together, ready to begin their new chapter. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows behind them as they stepped into the hallway. Their footsteps echoed in perfect sync, a physical reminder of their unity. Both of them knew that challenges would come. They always did in Nathaniel's world. But now they would face them together, their shared love and purpose making them stronger than ever. Hand in hand, they made their way through the building that housed so many of their dreams and plans. Each step felt like a promise, a commitment to the future they would build together.